they created it with humanity in mind.
Okay,
If it
interesting.
happened, it was an accident.
Okay, have you studied philosophy, or you just what are you studying at the moment, if you don't mind me asking?
Computer science.
Oh, really?
Further maths, economics.
Okay, fantastic. So you're familiar with logic and syllogisms. Like that's more your thing, yeah?
Yeah.
So when it comes to, say, us, would you say that we're dependent or we're independent
What do you mean by that?
as human beings? Like dependent on elements around us, dependent on things for our survival.
Yeah, I'm thinking of food, water, things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
I think we're also
I'm not
dependent on each other as a society.
for sure. So in other words, we have countless dependencies, not one dependency. So I'm not catching you out, by the way, yeah? And I'm not here to trip you up, not here to get like a little thing. If you feel uncomfortable, you're more than welcome to walk away. You're more than welcome to chip in when you want, and I welcome, back and forth. So if we then carry this on further, if we say that, look, we're dependent on something else, that's dependent on something else, that's dependent on something else, would you agree that there cannot be an infinite regress of dependent things?
I feel like there can be a circular sort of dependency. Like, I think there's a word for that. Biology, I forgot. But like, something can be dependent on something while that is dependent on the original.
Ah, okay. So isn't a similitude comes to mind is like a mother giving birth to herself?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Because if you're saying something, it's like me, I'm dependent on something that's dependent on something, and then it comes back to me. So it's like I'm dependent on the thing that was dependent on me.
Yeah.
You see? So it's circular reasoning, isn't it?
I think, but that's okay. I think that is like a sustainable circular.
No, that's okay. When you say it's okay, you mean in a real sense or in a mathematical sense? This is where this mathematics gonna come in, isn't it?
I'm not sure. I'd still say both. Because like,
Let me give you an example. Let's just say, in order for me to give the bottle to you, I have to ask his permission. He has to ask his permission. He has to ask his permission. He has to ask his permission. If it goes on ad infinitum, would I ever give the bottle to you? No. In order for me to give the bottle to you, there has to be an end to the chain, isn't it? So that's a real world example. So I guess what I'm saying is that even us as dependent beings, there has to be an end to this chain for us to even exist. Otherwise, again, we're left in a linger. Do you see, the fact that we're here has to mean that there's an end to that chain. And it's the end to that chain that philosophers call a necessary being. Because we got Leibniz, you got Aristotle, he'll call it the prime mover or something. So what do you think about this? Does it make sense that we cannot have an infinite regress of dependent things?
I guess
For us to even
I would agree
exist.
with you in that sense, but I still don't see the case saying that there is a necessary being. It doesn't have to be a being that cared about humanity. I still believe
No
that
problem.
it's way more likely that it just happened by accident. 'Cause it's,
No problem.
you know the thing about how if there's a puddle and it fills the hole in the ground, it thinks, oh wow, this hole was made for me, it fits me exactly.
Yes.
It doesn't. It fit the hole, not the other way around.
Right.
I think that's what this kind of comes.
I get that. Let's compound it. Let's build it, scaffold it. Let's not get to the Abrahamic God so far. For now, let's just stick with. So we have dependent beings. We can't have an infinite chain of dependent things. So logically, there has to be an end to that chain. Yeah, which philosophically is known as the necessary being. Yeah, even when you look at existence, they say there's three types of existence. Yeah, an impossible existence, a necessary existence, and a dependent existence. Yeah. So the only other existence at the end of that chain philosophically would be a necessary being. You said that makes sense, yeah? Yeah.
I
Now,
still agree with his thing.
okay, so let's just say but his thing would be that there is.
I think for the sake of this conversation, let's say that I agree with you just because I'm interested to see where you're going.
Okay, no problem. The only thing when it comes to circular dependency, it's like me saying I'm dependent on the microphone is dependent upon him, he's dependent upon me, so him dependent on me, I'm dependent. So then that doesn't explain where I'm from. That just takes the chain to somebody else that's dependent, and then it just comes back to me. It's known as the cosmic bootstrap, which means you're trying to pull yourself up using your shoelaces. So I'm really trying to.
I'm having so much trouble right now.
Yeah. Is it alright if we move to the side? Yeah. She's saying,
Louder than my thoughts are.
you know what I mean? Louder than the, was it? Somebody said she's louder than the voices in my head. Oh, the camera, because it's a speaker's corner, what people do is, because people come to discuss about religion, theology, philosophy, so these things get recorded and they get shared, and it's just, people like the fact that people are discussing about topics and people find these discussion fascinating.
Just wondering if it's going to end up on YouTube with like atheist gets owned.
Yeah, no, that you know that's why I said I'm not here to kind of catch you out. You can tell from my tone. I'm not kind of, but you said aha, because I could have easily with the circular thing that would have been easy, but like, I'm not here to kind of grab you and be like, oh, so do you mean this? Aha, it's atheist. But to be honest, I don't find those sorts of discussions productive. My aim is, like, I might be able to learn from you, you might be able to learn from me. I think that would be the greatest victory. Or for us to even leave this gathering with less biases about somebody that thinks something different. Or sometimes I may have studied something, spent time studying it, and you might be able to pick it up from me and be like, you know what, that's really helpful actually. So I mean, that's what I like. And like I said, if you feel uncomfortable, just all you have to do is just walk away. It's literally as simple as that. So we'll come back to the circular thing. I think that will be interesting. But I like your kind of, you know what? It just looks. Sometimes I check these on camera; they don't look very nice. So I want to just do it a bit like that. Right. So when we have this necessary being, so the necessary being, we agree that it's the end of the chain. So if it's the end of the chain, it makes it independent. Yeah, because everything depends upon it. It doesn't depend on anything. If it did, it would make it dependent itself. Hence, the chain would have to carry on. So it's independent. I would also argue, and feel free to jump in when I've said it, I would also argue that it has power. Because power gets power from that which it... So let's just say I create something. That will get power from me. Yeah? So power is connected. So there's a chain even of power as well. So we depend upon something for power, that depends on something, so that naturally concludes that the necessary being also has to have power, can't be devoid of power. So I would say independence, power. I would also say will. It also needs to have will. The fact that we have come into being, that you see the universe, you see planets, you see creatures in the universe, the fact that it was created at one time and not another time means that there is some sort of choice being made. When there was nothing for something to be done, there has to be some sort of volition, some sort of choice being made. And then I would also argue that this necessary being is also wise. Yeah, and I'll say, and this is good you said that. I think you're being a bit too polite, which I appreciate, but I'll just read your micro expressions. So when you say wise, the reason why you may have an issue is because you might kind of think that it's more like a human kind of characteristic, or where did you get wisdom from? I would say when you look at what's around you, would you agree that there is a degree of intelligence?
Do you mean like
Complexity,
society?
complexity, purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you going into the like, this is designed by God? It has to be made by a higher power.
No, what I'm saying is that because of the intelligence and the complexity, or at the very least, consistency within nature. Yeah, because for us to even do science, that we have to accept that there is a degree of consistency in nature. The three technical terms are that the universe is uniform, regular, and stable for us to even do science. Because if it wasn't uniform, regular, stable, I mean, the microphone will randomly be combusting, trees will be floating. There has to be, we get up the next day and copper still conducts electricity. Water is still two hydrogens and an oxygen. So for us to see this, I would argue that it also means that the necessary being is also wise, yeah, and intelligent. Because, and I would also say that an individual that's wise would not create things without purpose. It's not a consequence of wisdom for somebody to create something with no purpose in mind, directionless, purposeless, and just leave it and abandon it.
Do you believe humans are wise?
I believe we are wise, yes.
But don't humans make things just randomly without particular purpose?
That depends. When you say why humans do something, do you believe we have absolute free will, or do you believe in deterministic free will?
Deterministic free will being kind of
Yeah, it's all determined by the forces and everything around us. Like, I'm only moving my arm because, the muscles in my arms did this, then something triggered in my mind that was linked to something that I saw, blah, blah, blah. So all to do with stuff that's deterministic. There is something in the middle, by the way. It may be, that's what we believe as Muslims. Is we believe that there is determinism, free will, but there's also something that marries the two together called compatibilism, which there's a bit of both. Like, there's certain things that determine, like I can choose to stand on one leg, but I can't choose to stand on no legs. So there's the free will, but then determinism. There's something
mine would be in the middle. I can't.
Compatibilism. Yeah, exactly. So coming back to your question, I think it would depend on determinism. Certain people would argue that human beings are determined. So although you may not consciously be doing something, you'd have certain psychologists, they would say that no, it's your conditioning from your first 6-7 years of your life. Who's that famous psychologist? His name's, I'm going to kick myself later. It's going to be one of those things. It's so annoying.
Psychologist.
Yeah. So it's always determined on something. Why we're doing something, it could be to relieve stress. It could be because we're frustrated. A person may think that they're doing something, but even, when you go to like a therapist, there's like an ink blot that they show you. Yeah. It looks something totally random, but they want to see what you can read into it or whatnot. The method to the madness, in other words. I would say that there could be an argument about, but I would say that we don't have the characteristics that the necessary being has. We might be wise to a certain level, but I would say that when you look at the wisdom that's in creation, that wisdom, that intelligence far supersedes the intelligence that we have as human beings. So what do you think about what I've said so far? Logically, we're not progressing at the moment. You're more than welcome to come back and say, can you elaborate more on that? I think it's a bit lacking.
I disagree mostly with the wisdom part so far. I think that humans, you said humans are wise, but we do create things with no real meaning. And yes, this necessary being might be beyond our comprehension. I don't think that necessitates every action they do having powers, because relative to, say, an act, a human is this necessary being. He can create an environment. Those ant farms, that's an environment in which we have absolute power over them. And yet, if I drop an apple into this ant farm versus a piece of lettuce, that's completely random. That's not a consequence of me being wise and thinking every molecule of that apple sliced through. That's just, it happened. To me, that choice didn't seem significant. I think that a necessary being on that scale would also kind of be zoned out these things. What does a single planet in a single galaxy matter when you're thinking on the scales of an entire universe? So I think that as the scale increases, the consequences just matter less for this necessary being, the same way that to me an ant matters less.
Okay, so bear in mind the definition of a necessary being is something that's indivisible, has no beginning. Yeah, like it doesn't come into existence. It's not composed of, like they say, quote unquote, parts. Yeah, that's the definition of a necessary being. So remember what I said, the necessary being is the end to the chain. So although to the ant we may seem as the necessary being, but they can see us, isn't it? So here we're talking philosophically and rationally. We're saying that rationally, if you keep going in the chain, like we may seem to the ant as a necessary being, however, logically we're not, and practically we're not, because there is something that we depend upon as well, isn't it? And we are dependent upon certain things, like the ant will see that this person also, I don't know how ant thinks, we may need to sit down, we may, like after we've given something, we need to then move back and get something back again. Our hands are limited. I don't know if an ant can comprehend that, but at the very least, the end to that causal chain, the end to that of dependencies is the necessary being that I'm talking about. I totally get what you're saying, which is that if we start attributing necessity to any little thing, I think it would become ridiculous, frankly. I mean, we'd be a necessary being to our cat probably, and a lion would be a necessary being to us. But bear in mind the definition is it's reliance. Yeah, it's dependence. You're dependent upon that. The lion is dependent upon something else. So this necessary being is not dependent upon food. It's not dependent upon sustenance. It's not dependent on time and space, because time and space, according to the Big Bang, some will claim that it started at the Big Bang. But I mean, that's a whole nother issue in itself. So yeah, and the other thing, you were making some really good points. So what do you think now about necessity? Does it make sense that it's the end to that causal chain? If something is dependent, like human being like us, that makes it void for us to be called a necessary being. Like logically, for us to even be here and standing, there has to be an end to that chain.
I'm still just not quite convinced. I agree with every stage of your argument, but then it all comes together and I still just don't see why there has to be a necessary being. I still think that requires too much purposefulness. I don't think the universe is that purposeful enough to necessitate a God. I agree that there is an end point. I just don't see why that end point has to be a being that we've imagined.
Okay, I'm going to come back to this point because we're probably going to build on it. But the point before, I just remembered what you said before. You said human beings do things without a purpose. What examples would you be able to give me of such things? Practical examples,
yeah.
Not just for the sake of this discussion. You're like, aha. yeah.
I guess it's not so much about purposefulness, purposelessness. I guess it's more just coincidental, almost accidental choices we make. Like the ant farm, what do I feed my ants today? I wouldn't put that much thought into that kind of stuff, which isn't what you asked for, but I think it's along the same lines. It's not purposeful.
But feeding an ant surely is.
Feeding an ant is the choice in the food. I can't. I'm on the spot. I'm trying to.
No problem. I'm not here to catch you out. Like I said, I mean, even if you come up with an example later on, I'll just be interested to hear about it. I'll tell you why I've asked you this, because I tend to argue with people that disbelieve in a God. I say that the criteria that you have for everyday life, for the evidence, the bar is set very low. But when it comes to, say, God, the bar is set very high. But just like even in science, we have the inference to the best explanation. Yeah, we have a set of choices and we say, you know what? Although I can't say for certain, I would say logically, rationally, the inference to the best explanation is this. So would you say the inference to the best explanation for us is that typically as we're journeying through life, because I mean, an evolutionist would argue that for us to lead a purposeless life would mean that we would die. Because if you don't get up, if you don't go to sleep, if you don't eat, if you don't drink, if you don't procreate, if you don't cover yourself, if you don't go to work, if you don't study, if you don't have friends, all of these things have a negative consequence. If you don't have friends, you become unsocial. Then studies say that, you know, your life expectancy goes down. If you don't drink water, you become dehydrated. It affects your skin, and all of these sorts of things. So, rationally, logically, human beings, yes, not like I'm not trying to say that. Look, every single thing that we do has an obvious purpose, but there definitely is an underlying purpose. That Sigmund Freud, that's it. So Sigmund Freud calls it the id. That any choice that we make, most of it is the things that are in our unconscious mind. So it will be things that have affected you when you were young. It could be your relationship with your mother, relationship with your father, sort of things that you saw, because your mind when you're young is absorbing things like a sponge. Why you're attracted to a certain individual and their characteristics as opposed to somebody else, why you like a certain color, why you like certain words, why you like certain numbers. You might think it's random, but it's all predicated on the things that you saw and you experienced when you were young. Do you say that makes sense?
Yeah.
So when now as human beings, I don't know about you, but I struggle to make an IKEA cupboard.
Oh, I love building IKEA cupboards, actually.
But I struggle. Yeah, you know why I struggle is because if I had some text accompanying those images, it would be so helpful.
Yeah.
But the fact that I'm just relying on an image, I'm there comparing the screws, like, does that look like that? Does that look like that? So it makes it really difficult. So my creative ability is very lacking. But when it comes to what we see around us, even if I give certain examples, the bioluminescence of fish, like I find these natural documentaries, some of them are quite fascinating, especially the one that really sticks out for me is Planet Earth. And I think another kind of series that came off Planet Earth had a series where the more deep you go into the ocean, it becomes darker and darker and darker, more pressure builds up. In fact, the first time that they went down there, they saw light. Now they say, let there be light. They didn't say that though.
Yeah.
Maybe they were atheists. So when they went down there, they were fish with, and this is so hilarious, there was like a thing that was just dangling off the head with a light bulb.
Yeah.
So they call it bioluminescent fish. It's fantastic. Then you got the mandarin duck. Then you've got the homing instinct of a pigeon, migratory instinct of a bewick swan, and the echolocator system in that of a bat. And even when you look at a human being, it cries out design. Now, that's not the center of my argument, but even staunch atheists like Richard Dawkins says that when you look at the fine-tuning argument, to him, in his opinion, you're aware of Richard Dawkins, yeah. So Richard Dawkins say the fine-tuning argument, to him, was the most convincing. Fred Hoyle said something similar. In fact, he said that when I was looking at carbon, which is the main element of our existence, like human beings are made primarily of carbon. If you look at how carbon's made, one of the ways that it's made is 3 heliums coming together makes carbon. So helium was one of the primary elements of the universe. So he said that I tried to kind of make them come together, but he said it just wasn't happening. I tried everything, it was just so frustrating. But he said that the nuclear ground state energy has to be within 1% for the 3 heliums to come together for a carbon to form. And he's on record as saying that there's nothing that shook my atheism as much as that. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen to you, but what I'm saying is that there are people that are even more skeptical that have conceded that, you know what, because for us to say that it's not designed, the mere fact that we go out, there's tourism, there are naturalists, zoologists that are studying, and you had the light microscope, then the electron microscope. The more you kind of go into creation or nature, the more you realize there's more for us to see. And the way it's intricately designed or intricately present, it does beg the question, how? Why? Because I'll tell you, when somebody says, look, you come into a kitchen, you see a cup of tea there. Person says, no, I mean, you and me are in the home. Why is there a random cup of tea in the kitchen? You would never conclude in your wildest dreams that it happened over hours. And the window was open and, the curtain hit the saucer and it landed there and this. You would never conclude that. You would say, the window's open, somebody bloody came in, nicked something, made a cup of tea, left it because they heard us coming and legged it. Logically, isn't it? So I would say that, when you say that, the fact that, we're here as human beings, we have water. This is the only planet in our solar system that has water, has oxygen. And even that water, the more you look in, only 3% of our planet has fresh water. And that is enough for everybody. Yeah, if you look at oxygen, if we don't have a certain level of oxygen, we die. If we have too much salt, we die. Too little salt, we die. Too much sugar, we die. Too less sugar, we die. If the pressure is too much, we die. Pressure is too less, we die. So flimsy, but yet we're here. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you add all the fine tuning, person can say, the saucer landing there is coincidence. The cup landing on there is also coincidence. The kettle boiling is a coincidence. The water landing in there is coincidence. The tea bag in there is coincidence. Do you see? So then I know you want to jump in and I'd love that. So then just to end, the inference to the best explanation with regards to everything that we see, when we concede that there are three options. Number one, the universe created itself. Number two, it came by chance. Or number three, it was created by somebody or by an entity. I would say the inference to the best explanation is the third. Logically, rationally, how we live our life, explanation, yes, indeed, we could say that, okay, but then that also begs this question and that's fantastic. We can go into that. But would you say that the inference to the best explanation does suggest that the third of the options makes sense to us rationally? Or you could just ask me another question and ignore what I said.
Well, on some of the things you said, you were talking about the fine-tuning of the 3% of water being drinking of the oxygen. I'd say that goes back to the argument that I think quite poorly I made it, but about the puddle in the ground, saying, wow, this hole in the ground was built for me. It's the exact same shape as me. It was built for me. And then in reality, it's just that the puddle took the shape of the hole in the ground, not the hole was built for the puddle. I think that's humans doing that again. It's like, wow, what are the chances? This is so impossible. Someone had to have made the Goldilocks zone for our planet to exist in, to not get fried by the sun or get frozen beyond comprehension. The oxygen.
Okay, let me jump in because you made a good point. I've heard this point a couple of times before, but I want to find out then, so how do you explain the fine tuning?
Well, I think that it's just by chance a bunch of things, like it's evolution. You adapt to the situation that you're in over millions and millions of years. Humans didn't come around. We didn't wake up one day and exist in a society. No, there was tons of the Homo sapiens, and then before that, do you remember the ones that came before us? They all died out because, well, they didn't all die out, but some did because they weren't suited to the environment. They weren't competitive enough.
But bear in mind, when it comes to evolution, that evolution starts with the first self-replicating DNA. Yeah, it doesn't explain how the first organism was there in the first place and where that actually starts from. Evolution says that, look, tell us, Big Bang, how it all started. Let's start with the first organic matter, and we can explain how, using the data, that the best explanation that we have at the moment is the tree of life. Yeah, because even evolution, it depends. Do you mean like natural selection? Do you mean Darwinian tree of evolution? But that doesn't explain how we get the first kind of self-replicating DNA, whether it's the amoeba or whatever you want to call it. Like, how were the conditions for that finely tuned? Am I correct to assume that you're saying that it just happened by chance, trial and error?
No, I think by chance implies that I think that it just kind of happened. I don't think it just kind of happened. I think that
okay, brilliant.
It was trial. Yeah.
Sure.
So when you were arguing about like the teacup and the magically, the curtain made the whatever, you're arguing that in terms of coincidence, the chance of that happening, that's within like the 80 years of your life that happening, and like you happen to live in that house, whatever, right? But the chances of you living in a planet with the temperature and whatever, the chances of that, you're looking at the scale of the whole billion years of the universe's existence, and like all the billions and trillions of planets that there are. There's nothing special about this specific planet. You would have said the same conclusion based on any planet. That would be wrong. You sort of get what I'm saying?
Just summarize it again.
Sorry, so you're saying that the teacup thing is impossible because the chance of that happening is so low, and you're using that argument for why the
So are you saying that because there's a difference in timescales? You're saying, yeah? Okay, so you're saying that, but wouldn't that also make the point that, let's just say, if I see a phone, or even the teacup, and it's there over thousands and hundreds and thousands of years, the thing there would be, it still cries out intelligence. I'll tell you why. Because where there is a degree of hypocrisy in the sense that even archaeologists. Yeah, archaeologists. I'm confusing them with paleontologists. So archaeologists, when they dig stuff up, when they see maybe like a vase or something, they don't conclude that it came by chance, isn't it? They don't say that, oh, this just popped, and they say, we found something that belongs to a civilization, because there are certain things that indicate design. So that's why I'm saying that even with human beings, there are certain things within us that indicate design enough for survival, enough for purpose. Even the fact that we have consciousness, the fact that we have cognitive abilities, that we can question these things. Because if a person was to say no, it's just by chance, and that's why your point was interesting, because that would assume, when you say that, trial and error implies that there's a degree of natural selection taking place even when it comes to the universe, which again would require evidence. And I don't think there's a theory that has been posited as such. There's actually a thing, but I'm gonna again kick myself because I've forgotten what it's called, but it's saying it's similar argument to what you said, which is good, by the way, that because we see a puddle, we think that it fits. But bear in mind that if the crater that has the water, if that crater becomes less, then the water fits in. If the crater becomes more, the water will still fit in. Hence Bruce Lee's statement, be like water. Have you heard of that? He says, water can flow, water can crash. Be like water, my friend. Yeah, and it's very profound, because he's trying to say, be fluid. Be fluid in your movements. My accent wasn't very good.
I think it was great.
Yeah, thank you. So that's the thing. But human beings, when you start, if the Earth was slightly a bit away, I would say about 4% away from the sun, we would die. It would be too cold. If you would 4% within 4% close, it would be too hot. We would die. If the Earth starts spinning less, we would die. That's why people are so hung up on going to Mars, because they're saying, the orbit of the Earth is slowing down. We have this thing in our galaxy that's heading towards us. We do now need to be thinking about X and Y. We need to be prudent. So if we were like the water in a puddle, then we wouldn't mind. We'd say that, whatever happens, we would just adapt. But the fine tuning, maybe I should have given you examples. So the fine tuning, one was of carbon, being 1% finely tuned. 2% is actually the Earth, and the sun needs to be within 2%. Then we go to 1 in 10 to the power 16. That's the degree of fine tuning of the atom, the nuclear strong force and the electromagnetic force. These two need to be 1 in 10 to the power 16. In fact, even the expansion at the beginning of the Big Bang is 1 in 10 to the power 55. So when we start going, you're a mathematician, you know that when it comes to a certain amount of zeros, you say, negligible. Like even the calculator gives up at a certain degree. So when it comes to the probabilities that we're dealing with, they are incredibly precise. Like so precise, a person's like, okay, you got me interested now. That's the sort of fine tuning I'm dealing with, not just the typical dead ones that we hear about.
What you're saying can be argued with like the multiverse theory, how there's like so many world interpretations. How there's like an infinite amount that such insignificance doesn't matter since there's an infinite amount of it.
Excellent, good. But multiverse presupposes a universe, isn't it? Which, again, it's like saying the universe created itself. The universe... Oh, is that mine? Oh, thank you. You're very kind. I didn't bring you anything. So when you say the universe created itself, that presupposes a universe, isn't it? It's like saying, yeah, my son. What, you have a son? Oh, no. So the universe, if I say, explain the universe, you say, okay, so the universe created itself, but there were other universes, and even that, I think that multiplies the problem. Because we can't explain one universe, it's a theory, and it's not proven at all. And we're saying, you know what, it could be, there could be loads of universes. There's actually not a shred of evidence for the multiverse theory. It's interesting looking into it, and they're working on it. String theory, Michio Kaku and these guys doing a good job. But again, that universe would depend on something else, and that would depend on something else. And there has to be an end to the causal chain. That's why I try to undercut that by saying the contingency argument, just in case you guys want to search that up later. So I don't think that we're like the water in the thing, because we wouldn't be wanting to go to Mars. We'd be content with planet Earth, and we'd say we just adapt. Like people say, they say with giraffe, they want to get the fruit on the highest, part of the tree. That's why, the neck started. I wouldn't mind getting an apple and top of the tree, I wouldn't mind the long neck. But the point is that again, there's a degree of rationality.
I guess what you're saying is sort of to like...
inference to the best explanation.
So it's like similar to the rules of maths, how there are these axioms that you can't argue with and not allowed to argue with to make maths work. And you can like challenge these axioms and you get like different results for that. Is that sort of what you're trying to say?
That's a good point, actually, because the necessary being is like an axiom or a presupposition for you to even do maths. In fact, for us to even do science can't prove maths. It can't. Science can't prove the law of non-contradiction. Science can't do that. Science can't prove that you shouldn't kill an innocent person. These are things that science can't prove. These are presuppositions for you to do science. In fact, even induction as well. I don't want to patronize you guys. I'm assuming you know these things. If you don't, just say, look, can you just elaborate on that? I don't know what that means. It's too technical. So there's a certain presupposition. Even with maths, there are presuppositions as well. But what I'm saying is that if you take philosophy, if you take rationality, if you take teleology, cosmology, I think the case that's built for a God is the best inference to the best. It's the best inference to the best explanation. Is the inference to the best explanation, other than chance? It just came by chance, yeah. Or I'm not saying that's what you said, by the way. It just came by chance, or it created itself. Because for us to say any of the other things, even if we look at our experience, like I think we have enough time. Like this is what we suggest for the Earth as well, isn't it? The Earth is for I think how many billion years old? I think about 100 million since we're here, then 4 billion, and then 10, 13, yeah. So along those lines, and that was enough for the red blood cells to come together, the proteins to come together. Which ironically, if you actually look, like just the sperm and the egg, if you just look at the precise nature by which a sperm attaches to the ovum egg, the precise nature of the proteins in our body, the amino acids, that if some of them are not of a certain fit, it just doesn't happen. So when a person says, you know what, this is by chance, so the blood cells, yeah, by chance, oxygen by chance, this by chance, that by chance. So how would you then respond? Because I did think your example was a good one. I liked it. But how would you now retort to that?
I think that the sperm and the egg, the attachment, all that, it just happened to be the most efficient way at the time. There was a bunch of animals, and then the one with the best mechanisms classify them. I think it's just illusion. I don't see anything particularly grand in them. I don't see that as evidence for this. And also,
I think you do. I'll tell you why. When you see an artwork, like nowadays art, it's become quite pathetic. Let's be honest. Yeah, splodge on a canvas is classified as art. Yeah, just an empty canvas. People might be, I guarantee, if you hung that in the Tate, people would look at that like, profound, wow. But that's just...
attach a big enough price there.
Exactly. So when you see just a drawing, you assume, you don't say, you know what, that could have come over years and that, but the thing is, look, art is based upon humans. Art is based upon landscape. So the fact that art is appreciated to such a degree, then surely that presupposes that human beings are wondrous. And I would argue they are special in their beauty, in their complexity, in their intelligence, such that an artist would sit for hours drawing a human being, and that image of the human being would be sold for hundreds and thousands, but yet when it comes to the human being, people say, could have come over thousands and thousands of years. You know what? I remember a time, I was once an amoeba egg. I was an amoeba cell, and then I became a fish. And I get it. It's a way that people think, but I think people are becoming people are unjust, and they're not consistent. Like when they'll see a vase, they will naturally assume that, you know what, there was some intelligence behind it. You're not just going to say, you know what, it could, if left over millions of years, it could. Would you say that? You would, yeah?
Well, no, but...
There you go. So what's your name? Avan. Ron. So Ron, that's my point. That when it comes to our daily life, when it comes to even science and stuff that we do, we don't hold such a high bar and criteria. We would never say a vase just popped into existence.
Can I just jump in? Do you
Sure.
know the Hand of God Nebula? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know nebulas, but not the Hand of God nebula.
Can I pull out my phone and
You could
show
do,
it?
yeah.
It's a nebula that looks like a hand, and due to this, everyone says, well, it's a hand. You can see it looks like a hand. This is evidence for God. This is my...
I disagree with that, by the way. I'm not of those people.
Yeah,
I wash my hands.
People don't literally point to the nebula and go, this is evidence of God existing. But it's just one of those things where image isn't quite loading. But it's a nebula and you can kind of see the fingers there. And some people say that, well, this is so beautiful, this is so far away from us, and yet it's just like a hand. This is evidence for there's some deeper meaning to this. Whereas to me, this is like the clearest evidence. It's just gas particles that happen to be arranged in a shape that we recognize. That doesn't mean anything. So the same way I'd say the vase thing, actually I'd say it is kind of possible.
Wait, because you make good points. Let me just jump in. So with the nebula, that's the shape of a hand, would we then argue that shape and the shape of the hand fulfills a specific purpose for which it depends upon that shape? So with a hand, we use hands to shape people's hand, to hold things, to test the temperature, to live our life. Without a hand, we'd be handicapped. So it's like with the nebula, what I'm saying is that does it do something that is dependent upon its shape, that say the hand is? Because again, we're doing an eisegesis. We're saying because the hand fulfills such and such purpose, therefore we're seeing that shape there, therefore that's amazing, it's a hand. I think that's a stretch. That's why I don't agree with that stuff. Even with horoscopes, they say these stars are aligned in such and such, it looks like a lion. People do this, isn't it? They lie on their back, they look at clouds, and they go, that looks like a sausage.
It's called pareidolia.
That looks like an egg, or that looks like a fish. That doesn't mean that that is an egg, or that is a fish, or
Do you understand
or
what
whatever.
pareidolia is?
He comes every week. He just comes to discussions and he just trolls. He just keeps.
I'm asking a question. The vase, he says, that vase exists, doesn't it?
So
Yes, the bars
So,
exist.
welcome
Just
to.
a troll.
They
born a troll.
That's what they do.
And he
see.
will die like a troll.
Well, we
And
asking
he
a
will
question.
Yeah, so you made a good point.
Pareidolia,
So,
what is
so when it
pareidolia?
comes to the,
You know what?
do you want to go?
Go away.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. No. Really nice to meet you. No, nice to meet you.
Yes.
Out of respect in Islam, we don't. Yeah. We
You
don't.
ask and talk
Yeah,
to
really
people.
nice speaking to you guys.
It was interesting to hear.
Yeah. Take care, guys.
Here is your chance to defend yourself. Why running away? Why? What is stopping him to answer my questions?
It's when you see faces.
Hello.